Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the ESL Southeast European Championship. This is the third qualifier, and we're going to be presenting you the grand final between Superlubo and ProDG. Players, again, haven't given us much time to talk about picks and bans, but as we're getting into the game, we can have a quick chat about them. Superlubo has got Rogue, Paladin, Warlock, with his Druid being banned, and ProDG has got Shaman, Druid, and Warlock, with the Rogue being banned.
Yeah, not really. I mean, we've seen both these players already, so their lineups are not too much of a surprise. Not really too much of a surprise either to see the Rogue being banned by Superlubo, as he has been banning that rather consistently. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to be able to jump into the game in a sec. Just getting spectate on both the players.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm also just waiting for ProDG to send
Yeah.
me an invite. There we
Yeah,
go.
but we're in now, and ProDG has that patches that he will obviously want to mulligan away, and he does have a pretty good start though. He chooses not to keep the um, Mark of Yashaj there, which he could have maybe kept if he wanted to be able to use it on the Bloodsail Corsair early on, or if he wanted to keep the Direwolf Alpha as well. But he opted to mulligan both of them, and now he might go for the Bloodsail Corsair into the coin Mark of the Lotus here. Because of how good it is at contesting this Firefly with the patches, obviously being a 2-2, it means it can kill off this Firefly here and survive, which is really important, as we've pointed out in many of our games before. These matchups are very board oriented, and both these players want to be ahead on the board and keep going in that direction. And Superlubo here uses his dagger, and ProDG could go with the Bloodsail Corsair here, but he goes with the Direwolf Alpha instead, because the Bloodsail Corsair Power of the Wild is a good option next turn, as well as this just filling out his mana curve a lot better.
So ProDG looking really strong here. Got such a strong board. He's already put Superlubo down to 25. Superlubo has no board whatsoever. And you can't even really play this Edwin. That's nice on turn 3, but obviously without absolutely anything to play with him, he's just literally going to be a 2-2. I suppose you could go South Sea Deckhand to get the patches, but it still becomes very difficult as to what do you actually clear here.
Yeah.
You probably clear the beast, I think.
Yeah. You may as well clear the beast, I suppose, to play around Mark of Yashaj. Obviously, otherwise that can give ProDG a lot of value here. The Direwolf Alpha is another consideration here. I don't think Power of the Wild is good enough here, as as either the buff or the plus or the 3-2. So I think he can just go with the Direwolf Alpha here and then choose to hold the Power of the Wild for a following turn. The only other consideration is that going with the plus on the Power of the Wild would allow his Bloodsail Corsair to be outside of range of the dagger. But here he's getting in the damage with that Direwolf Alpha now, as well as if Superlubo just attacked into this Bloodsail Corsair, then he'd be getting in the damage again, thanks to that buff from the Direwolf Alpha. But we can see Superlubo does have that backstab, which is pretty good here, and with the Flame Elemental and the Van Cleef, he can actually generate a pretty decent board for himself with the 6-6 Van Cleef here.
Yeah, 6-6 Van Cleef is also not too bad, and also very difficult for the Druid to deal with. Druids typically any monster that's above 4 health generally becomes very difficult for the Druid to deal with.
Yeah, especially this early on, and especially in the aggro token druid, there's not really anywhere near as much removal. Interestingly, ProDG has included a Hungry Crab in his list. We have seen Murloc Paladin be very popular in this tournament, so it's not maybe too much of a surprise that he's making that kind of meta read. And here, Superlubo does have a pretty awkward hand. He can just go with the dagger to clear the Corsair and play the Swashbuckler, or I mean, obviously, you play the Swashbuckler first, see what he can find. If he found something like Innovate, that could give him another alternative, because it would allow him to also get out the um, Vilespine. If he does go with playing the Swashbuckler here, I don't really like his choice of ordering. And to be honest, I don't really like the choice not to play the Swashbuckler. I think the Swashbuckler is pretty good. I know you could be worried about something like a Crawler, but I think the Swashbuckler probably had enough value that it was worth taking that risk. But it looks like he wants to hold it also to make sure he has an activation for this Vilespine this turn.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking into, was that possibly the reason that he would be saving it is that he would at least have something to combo the Valspine if anything big had to come out from ProDG. But the only big thing is that it's just been a wide board using that living mana, and
Yep.
things are looking a little bit challenging here now for Superlubo. I mean, like, he's activated the combo here for the Valspine, but I don't know if it's worthwhile even playing it.
Yeah, this is the kind of board that Tempo Rogue can really struggle with. Part of the reason we're seeing these kind of decks be popular, and Aggro Token Druid in particular is pretty good in the matchup. So it kind of these boards are just difficult. Miracle Rogue traditionally had stuff like Thalnos and Fana Knives,
Yeah.
whereas the Tempo Rogue is really just single target removal options like that Vilespine. I'm not 100% sure I like going face or not going face with the Edwin there. You also opened your opponent up to 3 mana here, so Savage Roar is now live as well. And Savage Roar is pretty good here because he can push 8 damage and basically trade off on the board such that he has the 2 Treants left. If he just uses his hero to kill the Van Cleef, it could leave him in a pretty good position. And you really do want to trade off the board going into that Bone Mare, but you do know your opponent bounced their Swashbuckler, which is either playing really cautiously around Galaka Crawler, or it's trying to set up for the Bone Mare with the 0 mana cost Swashbuckler in hand.
Yeah, I'm starting to lean a little bit more towards the fact that you're probably saving at this point in time for that bone mare
Yeah, definitely.
target.
Definitely. I think with the double Bone Man hand, he does need to make sure that he finds a target for the Bone Man next turn, or he could fall quite far behind on board. So I think that's definitely his plan here. And the Savage Roar could be an option, but he can also just play it more passively here. Just go with the hero power to clear the Van Cleef, and then I imagine just push face with these Treants. As I mean, I say it's playing it passively, but in some ways it's also a much more aggressive play because you're setting up for a good Savage Roar. But that is a really good top deck of the backstab. That's exactly what you want to deal with these Treants. And now he's going to be able to kill off
Oh,
these Treants. The Savage Roar is pretty nice as well. Um, it would allow him to possibly have some kind of backswing lethal sometime soon. But I imagine I really like going face there with the 7, especially now that you got uh, the Savage Roar in hand. I feel like you could be a little bit more aggressive there.
yeah, I really think he could have gone a little bit more aggressive there than rather just trading away. I mean, you're also giving your opponent an additional mana crystal, which I don't think you really want to do. Or you're
Yeah,
giving them a mana crystal back,
so
at
now
least.
with the double Savage Roar, ProDG can trade in the Treant into the Vilespine, and he can push face here for 9, which leaves Superlubo on 2. I think that's better here than going with the trade. You're basically putting him on a 2-turn clock if he doesn't have any kind of taunts, but we can see Superlubo has that second Bone Mare follow-up, and so he's just going to Bone Mare his Bone Mare, and then follow it up with a Cold Blood as well, and now all of a sudden the 2-turn clock is flipped around, and ProDG needs to find um,
Swipe.
a swipe, yeah, swipe, or I was going to say a Spellbreaker to get through this taunt, as that would also allow him to win with the hero power. So the hero power and the crab, which might be enough motivation for Superlubo to trade here. I do think if he trades here, this is a big mistake because he could have just cold-blooded the Swashbuckler and traded with it. And Superlubo is kind of realizing that. Only afterwards, I think he realized that he could still die to something like a Spellbreaker. So to play around that, he went with uh, the trade with the Bone Mare, but obviously missing out on quite a lot of damage there as a result.
Yeah, and now pretty much ProDG is just playing to not lose at this point in time. He's not really playing.
He's
He's not really in a position to play to win. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he can only play to a swipe top deck out at this point, if he does have that in his deck. Um, Superlubo could have had a position where he could have set up lethal here with the Savage Roar, but he doesn't because he just spent 13 damage last turn going to kill a 1-2 because he had to play around the Spellbreaker out. And he's not going to be punished for it as he is just going to win here. ProDG will kill himself on this Bone Mare. Eventually that double Bone Mare value was enough to get the win here for Superlubo as he is moving up to a 1-0 lead here over ProDG.
Yeah, so Super Lubo really looking good there, and the double bone mare, really the kicker I feel there for Super Lubo. I mean, bone mare on its own can generate so much value, but if you be able to get both of them off, as well as the one bone mare buffing up the other bone mare,
Yeah.
as well as a cold blood, man, there's very little that pretty much any class will be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, his use of the cold blood there was clearly a mistake, but he did at least realize that. I think he was planning on going face and then only realized the Spellbreaker out afterwards. So yeah, that was a little bit of an error there. His thinking, I imagine, was that he didn't want to put anything on the Swashbuckler because it was susceptible to Galaka Crawler.
Yeah.
But he didn't really think of the Spellbreak out in time. But we're going to be able to jump into the second game here. Superlubo 1-0 up, and he is now going to be on his Zoo Warlock up against this aggro Token Druid.
Yeah.
And what do you think of the Firefly and the South Sea Captain here? Do you think they're worth keeping? I mean, the Firefly probably, but the Captain, is it maybe too slow against Zoo?
You know what? I'm in two minds about it. One, I would say it's actually pretty good. I mean, it's a nice body, especially if you don't draw the patches. It does give your patches a lot more survivability. It also offers better trades available for that patches that comes out. I mean, like Flame Emster possibly on the board. It's a very clean, easy trade. Prince Keleseth or whatever that we see there. But I like the fact that he's also got rid of it. I feel that you might be looking for something that's even faster. And the Hungry Crab coming down, 2 health helps a little bit.
Yep, and it's obviously good going into the Mark of Yashaj. This is largely the reason Hungry Crab used to see play in the decks, is even when you weren't up against the Murloc Paladin decks, you did have the option of Mark of Yashajing it, which was a pretty good start as well. So it's not bad here for ProDG. And the Keleseth comes down, but once again, this Mark of Yashaj can come down, and he can take the value trade, or he can opt to go a little bit wider on board and look to use the Mark next turn. But I like using the Mark here. There's no possibility of drawing like the old nuts options like the Innovate, but he still is at least getting the value of the draw and taking the trade now rather than getting his 3/4 Soulfired, which is largely what he's playing around here.
Yeah, so he's going to be life tapping here. And Superlubo don't turn, nothing to even really play on 2. He's not even going to be considering playing that Malkazar Zimp. Very interesting, as ProDG's going to go with this Crypt Lord, and this is where things might start getting a little bit difficult here for Superlubo. I mean, this Crypt Lord can get a little out of hand considering the hand that ProDG has here.
Yep, he has a hand full of cheap minions, so that Crypt Lord could get to a lot of health. But on the other hand, you've got the natural enemy of the Crypt Lord, which is the Darkshire Councilman, which grows in attack for all the minions you play rather than health. So that's kind of what he's hoping to use to kill that Crypt Lord, but ProDG opting for the Poisonous Spider here instead. Quite a smart move, I like it. He's trying to use it to kill off this Darkshire Councilman so that he can't just use the Councilman to get through the Crypt Lord so easily. But we're definitely going to see the Councilman attacking in this turn, and Superlubo can at least get another buff on it with playing either the Malkazar's Imp here or the Firefly. And personally, I like the Firefly because I think the Malkazar's Imp's a little bit better because most of the trades are going to be into your Darkshire Councilman. So if the Malkazar's Imp survives, you get a little bit more value for your Doom Guard next turn, as well as it's just more likely to survive because it takes an extra minion trade into it, basically, because of the 3 health, unless, of course, that minion is the um, Galaka Crawler or the Poisonous Spider. But you know the Poisonous Spider is going to kill the Darkshire Councilman. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nine times out of 10, this spider is going to actually just kill off the Darkshire Councilman. I see no reason as to why it would trade into the Malkazar's Imp at all. As we do see that trade. And, Savage
Raw.
Roar.
Yep, that's something we didn't really speak about, but I'm pretty sure this is just going to be lethal here. 10, 18, 20, yeah, that is lethal here. Savage Raw, just another quick way to end it. And Aggro Druid is favored in this matchup, but usually because it has such good cards like Mark of the Lotus to buff up the board, as well as stuff like Living Mana. But there it was just get many minions on board and just able to win with that Savage Roar. And we kind of see one of the failings again of Prince Keleseth. Even though he's buffed up all the minions in the deck, that's really good going into the later game. But if you just beat the Prince Keleseth deck before they get any value from their minions, then all they did was play a 2-mana 2/2, which is not particularly good. So yeah, the
Prince
there getting
Keleseth
a good win.
misplay?
I mean, I don't
think it is.
I don't think it is. I think you're always going to play it on 2 because you don't really have other 2-drops. So as obviously a result of Prince Keleseth, so you don't really have the choice to, like, let's say if Prince Keleseth didn't have the condition, let's say, then you could actually have the other 2-drops in your deck and more options on 2. But you can try and get ahead of the Prince Keleseth decks like that by just making sure that, when they play a 2-mana Prince Keleseth that's just a 2/2, you actually get enough value that you can you can actually get far enough ahead on board that you can kill them before they get the value out of the Keleseth. But we're going to be able to jump back into the series now as we see the Warlock Mirror with the scores tied up at 1 game apiece.
Yeah, so 1 game apiece going into this mirror matchup now. And these kind of mirror matches, especially with the old days of Zoo, and not much has changed between them, it really comes down to who is better at getting value from their board control. Or Zoolock, often people, say it's an aggro deck, but often it can also be seen as a control deck.
Yeah, Zoo's kind of special in the fact that it falls a little bit in the middle, and that's, we've been speaking about a lot of these decks being Zoo-like. We don't really have many pure face decks anymore, especially after even Pirate Warrior has been nerfed and largely not seen very often these days. So we don't really have a lot of Zit decks that are just more about going face. They're more about always trading for the board, and that's something Zoo has traditionally done. And cards like Despicable Dreadlord and Bloodreaver Gul'dan have given Zoo a little bit of extra life recently, as it does have more options. And obviously the Prince Keleseth also gives them some extra value when they are life tapping for those cards and losing obviously some tempo when you're life tapping. It helps make up for it by playing just overpowered cheap minions essentially when they get their Keleseth buff. But speaking of overpowered cheap minions, here comes the Flame Imp, the traditional turn 1 sort of best play for Zoo. And this is a good start here as the Flame Imp and the Void Walker neatly contest this Firefly, and now Superlubo can go with his own Void Walker, but he doesn't have a Flame Imp here, so his the power he's able to present on board here is a lot more underwhelming.
Yeah, Flame Imp, I'm actually a little disappointed that ProDG doesn't actually have it in gold. Gold Flame Imps just look so awesome. As the Firefly is going to come down, the Flame Elemental as well. I'm just going to go wide on the board here as just trading again. So ProDG got a very nice board here. I mean, Superlubo has been able to develop this Tar Creeper, but we may just see this South Sea Captain pulling out this Patches here. And they're going to activate some really nice trades here. And just staying ahead on board. And as we said right at the beginning, this is the way that, Zoo beats Zoo. Is that if you want to win, you really need to be able to just stay ahead on board.
Yep, and the patches from the captain is so powerful. That's largely why we've been seeing it included, and that's a huge turn here for ProDG, or a huge turn to really dictate the way this game's going. As ProDG actually just completely whiffed on his turn 4. He went for the tap and still couldn't find anything. A handful of 5-drops and bone mares. Uh, this is really giving Superlubo a way back into the game, as he's now been able to essentially assemble the more powerful board here, and I imagine this Despicable Dreadlord will probably come down here after taking the trade. Obviously, really powerful in the mirror because of its end of turn ability, dealing that 1 damage. Just chipping away at the Zoo's board can really remove a lot of value trades for them. But speaking of value trades, Super Lubo is going to have this Doomguard
Doom
here,
God.
and he even risked basically having not being able to play the Flame Imp there by playing it second, as I think he wanted to have a better chance to save his Bone Mares going into turn 7. So that's largely, I think, why he ordered it like that, even though it might have looked like a bit of a mistake. He really just wanted to ensure that he at least had 1 Bone Mare going into his next turn.
Yeah. Thing is, though, Prodigy is also going to his next turn. He's also going into his Bone Mare turn, and he's going to be playing his Flame Imp, and then only the Doom Guard, and losing a Bone Mare as well. I don't think he really would like to have seen that, but
I think that's fair because you don't necessarily need 2 Bone Mares here. 1 is probably enough, and the Despicable Dreadlord is probably more important than the Bone Mare. But in ProDG's case, I do think it was better to play the Flame Imp first, because it was much more important for him to be on the board there with the extra minion than it was for Super Lubo. Kind of an interesting, also, I think Super Lubo had less cards in hand, so he had a higher chance of just double discarding Bone Mare. But either
hmm.
way, he is going to be able to use his Bone Mare here to take the value trade on that Flame Imp. And now ProDG doesn't have a target for his, but he does have the Soulfire. He can go with the Despicable Dreadlord and the Soulfire, which sets up a trade with the Bone Mare. But it looks like he's just going to go with the Despicable Dreadlord here, and that's risky play here, as the Bone Mare and that Flame Imp are threatening 13 damage, and something like a Doomguard off the top would
12.
have been lethal. Oh yeah,
12.
sorry, 12.
Yeah. So there's 12 damage that is representing. However, he's still being able to protect it now with that Void Walker, and going to go for the trade. Actually, playing it a lot safer. I don't know if I like that. I really would have
Uh,
preferred just continuing to push damage there.
I like the trade because uh, if your opponent played, let's say, a second Despicable Dreadlord, they would clear basically most of your board, and that would be quite scary. Whereas this way, it's very difficult for ProDG to actually clear the board here. Just basically, Super Lubo's gone wider, and he's actually been able to play that Glacial Shard. The thing is, if he just chose to freeze the Despicable Dreadlord, the Glacial Shard would have still died to the end of turn ability of the Dreadlord, so it wouldn't have necessarily saved him. But here, Prodigy has to discard his second Bone Mare, and this is going to be 1 damage short of lethal here for Super Lubo. But once again, in the Zoo mirror, you might well want to go for this. Just put your opponent on 1. So that they can't life tap anymore, and if you have just a superior number of minions on board, you should be able to actually win here. So he can go with the Soulfire first, and then the life tap, or he can actually he can Soulfire face here to set his opponent to 1, or he can go for the Soulfire on the Crystal Weaver here.
Yeah.
Obviously, tapping first is probably fine unless you draw Doom Guard. That's the one card that would have been a problem, and he has only played 1 Doom Guard, so but Doom Guard would have just been lethal anyway, so I suppose that's not really a problem if you just draw lethal.
Yeah. So Super Lubo has got the choice of this Soulfire, and I really like him using it face this turn and putting his opponent down to 1, because even if he leaves his opponent, he's using it on a Crystal Weaver. Like,
Yeah, he's gonna continue to trade, and this is a lot of trading. I am not so sold on that either. I really do think putting your opponent to 1 could have been valuable. Here, like, giving Prodigy the extra tap is pretty relevant. Uh, that's now all of a sudden a decent looking board for ProDG, and Superlubo needs to find something to help control this board. And Despicable Dreadlord is a pretty good draw here for him, but he still can't push face with this Killer Seth. Because he needs the Despicable Dreadlord's end of turn effect here to kill off the Tar Creeper, he's still kind of missing the 2 damage. And even though it doesn't look like ProDG is going to find a way back into this game, um, he could have been a little bit of at risk, Superlubo, if he hadn't managed to find any decent value draws here. But now,
Yeah.
ProDG has no way to protect himself here, and Superlubo is going to win this game and move up 2-1 in the series after winning the Zoo Mirror.
Yeah, Super Lupo just being overly controlly in that matchup, still picking up the win though. But I honestly feel that maybe it wasn't played as optimally as he could have. I think the game lasted about 3-4 turns longer than what it should have. I think that you should have been able to clear that off within. I mean, as soon as you put your opponent to 1, he would have drawn the Tar Creeper.
Sure.
The trades would have still happened the same way they did, but you would have just finished it a turn earlier.
Yeah, I think very often players can get stuck in one mindset when it comes to a matchup. And in that case, having seen both Bone Mares, I think he really could have just gone face as well. That was something else that he didn't have to worry too much about. But uh, very often in that matchup, as we mentioned, it's mostly about trading for the board. And I think Super Lubo could have been a little tunnel vision there. And ultimately, it was relatively low risk to trade for the board, but I think he definitely increased his percentages if he did put his opponent on 1. But moving on, we're going into our 4th game here, as ProDG is on his Warlock and Superlubo on the Paladin here, and that's a good opening hand for the Paladin.
I wouldn't describe it as good. That is an amazing starting hand for the Paladin. I mean, he's got the choice of going the Valfin Inquisitor, coining out the Grimescale Chum. He could also just consider coining out the Hydrologist. He's got a very strong starting hand. I think he might consider playing the Valfin Inquisitor turn 1. Whether he coins out the Grimescale Chum or not is up to him. It really is going to come down to how much does he value the that buff for the Grimescale Chum being potentially on the Valfin Inquisitor or not.
I think if it lands on the Valfin Inquisitor, you're pretty happy. I like going with the Grimscale Chum first, and here his decisions get even slightly more difficult because now he has another 1-drop to consider. I personally think I'd go with the Grimscale Chum first here, especially considering your opponent just played the Flame Imp. The Grimscale Chum neatly contests it, and if you get the buff on your Valfin Inquisitor, then you can coin it out, or you can coin out the Murloc Tidecaller. The other consideration then is to just play the Tidecaller first, and then the Grimscale Chum. This way you make sure both minions are on 2 attack, meaning both will trade into the Flame Imp here. Flame Imp is actually kind of weak for Zoo against this Murloc Paladin on turn 1, especially if the Murloc Paladin actually has their 1-drops. And even though this matchup is favored for Zoo, it's not looking very good for for ProDG right now, as Superlubo does have that just insane start.
Yeah, he's got an absolutely insane start. I mean, if you really wanted to continue with this, he's got the Rockpool Hunter available to him. Or you could consider going just a little bit wider with the Valfin Inquisitor as well as the Righteous Protector. But I think getting a little bit more damage on board is a little bit better because you know that your opponent is running things like Tar Creepers, and if one of those Tar Creepers were to come down, it would slow you down by a turn, meaning that it would allow the Warlock to actually build up some sort of board or whatever, and then things won't be looking that great for you.
Yeah, I think most importantly, this plays better around Tar Creeper. To play the Rockpool Hunter here rather than the 2 1-drops. The 2 1-drops would... Actually, I think the 2 1-drops play better around Tar Creeper now that I'm thinking about it. Because you could have just used the 3-2 and the Righteous Protector after you buffed the 3-2 up with the Rockpool Hunter. Oh, okay, no. Never mind. The 3-2 is, of course, already buffed by the Rockpool Hunter. So, yeah, this kind of does play a little bit better around the Tar Creeper, as your Rockpool Hunter here will actually survive the trade. So that's kind of why he goes with this. And here, the Hydrologist, I think Noble Sac is probably the best. You generally want Noble Sacrifice or Redemption in a matchup like this, where it's just a board battle. because those are the two
What
that
about
have the most
Repentance?
tempo effect. Repentance can be nice, but obviously the Warlock does tend to have a lot of cheap minions. You can make a guess that they have a pretty expensive hand though, based on the fact that you have seen them tap on turn 2 and then play Tar Creeper on turn 3. You can assume they don't have any 1-drops, so Repentance could be a way to play around something like Despicable Dreadlord on turn 5 or Doomguard on turn 5. Um, there's not a lot that on turn 4 that you'd want to play around though, so I think if he wants to play it now, this makes more sense, and also the Noble Sack here lines up nicely with this Tar Creeper.
Yeah, what he's also saying is that but I think by doing that, ProDG can make the read quite clearly that that is the noble sacrifice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no real reason to actually just bump in there like that.
Yeah, it does kind of clearly signal Noble Sacrifice. Uh, and ProDG is probably just gonna test with this patches here.
Patches.
The question is, will he want to kill the 3-1 afterwards? I suppose he may as well, because it because otherwise Superlubo can just trade with the hydrologist. So this also kind of forces him to make the trade there. He could also try and set up for the Despicable Dreadlord next turn, and I think that's why he briefly pointed at the 3-2. Something that Superlubo could make a bit of a read into if he wants to dive that deep into it, but probably not going to matter. And I kind of prefer just going for the 3-1 here. Otherwise, if you trade into the Grimscale Chum, you're basically just heavily committing to Despicable Dreadlord next turn, whereas this way he has options with the Doomguard and the Darkshire Councilman and Kelliseth as well.
Yeah, Super Lubo picking up this Blessing of Kings, and this opens up a lot of options now for him. He's got the choice of actually buffing up his 2-2 and pushing face for 6. Maybe even consider pushing face for 9. Or we could go with this Valfed Inquisitor as well as this Righteous Protector. Use his hero power, go get like a really nice wide board, especially if he's able to pick up something like the Gentle Megasaur.
Yeah.
3 Murlocs will be really nice. And if they get things like Poisonous or whatever, you're not too concerned about this Despicable Dreadlord.
Yep. He obviously also has the Blessing of Kings in hand, which is a good play on a board like this. He can buff up this Righteous Protector now and kill off this Despicable Dreadlord. Unfortunately for him, ProDG does have a second Despicable Dreadlord and that Voidwalker. This is actually a really good turn for ProDG. I imagine he's going to slam that double demon turn here as it neatly clears up a lot of Super Lubo's board, and all of a sudden, ProDG is back in this game.
Yeah, just like that, he's been able to climb back into this game. Just something like that. 2 Despicable Dreadlords, as you know, they didn't even get a chance to attack, but the mere fact that they were able to stick around and do that kind of damage is really good.
And because of that War Leader nerf, this is actually not a very good position for Superlubo again. ProDG just trades here, and then all of a sudden the Dreadlord is clearing off the other minions anyway. So ProDG can just go in here with the double Darkshire Councilman, or he can go in with the Darkshire Councilman and the Prince Kelliseth. I actually would have liked the double Darkshire Councilman plus the Malchazar's Imp personally. I think getting the Darkshire Councilman down is actually more valuable than just playing the Kelliseth at this stage. But it looks like Super Lubo, once again, he has the Curator here, which will at least force some trades. But that Despicable Dreadlord has just done so much work for ProDG.
Yeah, the amount of work he's doing is absolutely incredible, and even the Murloc hand recruits are really not going to do much because the Despicable Dreadlord's end of turn ability is just going to deal 1 damage again to the entire field here of Super Lubo, and it's just going to wipe it out completely. And this is where ProDG has actually been able to clinch back into this game. There's very little that Super Lubo can do. I mean, if he doesn't actually pull down this Curator, he's going to be taking a lot of damage. I mean, it's going to open the door for ProDG to actually play this the Doom Guard and just start pushing a lot of damage face. I mean, that will be 16 damage in 1 turn.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the Curator here is he probably has to play it to contest the board. His health total is high enough, but it looks like he's gonna go with the slightly more passive route. The hero power there is basically pointless. Because it obviously just dies to that Despicable Dreadlord, and now Super Lubo definitely just gonna go face for a lot here. Um, with this Darkshire Councilman and the South Sea Captain, he's actually able to build up a really big board. Or even here, he's going to go for the Doom Guard instead and push face for even more here. Oh, that Crystal Weaver draw is going to be really strong next turn with the triple Demon board if he manages to uh, actually find the time to play it. And it looks like he will probably. It looks like he's setting up for lethal here. I'm not sure what Superlubo can actually do to survive here. The Curator will help, obviously, and ProDG can kill off this despicable Dreadlord now. Maybe if he finds something like a Murloc, a Bluegill, sorry, a Bluegill warrior, then he can kill off the Keleseth as well. But beyond that, I'm not sure quite how he's gonna win this game. ProDG, by playing the Crystal Weaver, he's going to gain essentially 4 attack on board from the Darkshire Councilman, gaining their 1 naturally from their abilities, and then also buffing up the demons. So that means that the Doom Guard is going to kill the Curator naturally,
Mm-hmm.
or kill the Curator with the buff, and he's going to be able to push 7, 8, be able to push 13 damage. So that's going to be lethal anyway with the Crystal Weaver here, I believe.
This is going to just be the Curator here. The Crystal Weaver is just going to be able to buff up this Doom Guard, which means
Little
that
a little bit of a mistake in ordering from Superlubo. He could have played the Curator first. Obviously, the problem with that is he pulls out some of the Murlocs that uh, the Finja might pull out. But I suppose in the situation where he gets a 1-drop, it's better to do it the other way around. But anyway, this is now more than lethal damage with that extra crab he's drawn. And it looks like he has included crabs in probably all his decks for this matchup here against Superlubo, where he knows he is playing that Murloc Paladin, and that is the only deck he has remaining, as we're going to be now going into the final game with ProDG getting a win there, and it looks like we're going to be going into the final game, which is going to be ProDG's Shaman up against Superlubo's Paladin. Who do you think is likely to win that game?
I think it's going to come down again to if ProDG's actually got some crabs in his deck again. It's his Shaman that's left, correct?
Yeah, it's a
Yes.
Shaman.
Yeah. So if his Shaman has actually got some hungry crabs in as well, I think that will give him a really good chance. But going into the final game, I still have a feeling that ProDG might just be able to clinch it. I mean the Shaman hero. I mean the Shaman has got things like the early Jade Claws, which help a lot, as well as the Maelstrom Portal. And because the War Leaders nerf, it's it's not really there. It's a lot weaker to the Maelstrom Portal.
Yep, and they also have Devolve, one of the best cards against tribal synergies here. Uh, but you don't really need to keep Devolve, and it looks like ProDG has gone to the extreme of putting crabs in every single one of his decks, targeting this Murloc Paladin. A choice he made, obviously, after seeing Super Lubo's decks in previous rounds. And this Hungry Crab on turn 1 is a pretty good start. He could hold the Hungry Crab here, maybe just play the patches, or even just coin out the Galaka Crawler here, because he knows that Super Lubo is going to have another Murloc in his hand, because he just saw that Grimscale Charm actually buff up the minion, so he knows that there's at least one Murloc in hand, and he's going to see that Murloc coming down here in the form of this Hydrologist, and now the Hungry Crab is going to be extra value,
Yeah,
and as it finds an extra tasty Murloc.
yeah. So there's going to be a tasty Murloc that it's going to eat, as well as that Galactic Crawler. I mean, you could also just coin that out,
Yep.
if you really wanted to. I mean, you could also hold the coin potentially for Jade Lightning next turn on something that actually comes out. I actually like holding the coin here. I like maybe using the Jade Lightning a turn earlier than what it is normally used for, especially going into turn 3 where something like, a Murloc War Leader could be seen. But
Yeah.
obviously, Super Lubo not going to just play that because this Hungry Crab is already a 3/4.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you think about all the things a Paladin's going to play on turn 3, none of them will survive trading with the 3/4 here anyway. So the Jade Lightning just gives you some more options. Whereas the Galaka Crawler here, it's only really useful in kind of scenarios like this, I suppose, where the secret's coming down as well as the minion.
Hmm.
And now it would have been nice to have that extra minion to attack with, but by drawing the Jade Claws, he's kind of solved that problem. And now he could consider coining out the Galaka Crawler, but thanks to the Overload, he's basically just at 3 mana next turn. So I imagine he's probably going to hold this coin for the Jade Lightning next turn.
Yeah. So ProDG looking really strong. I mean, this Hungry Crab has just done so much work. Being able to eat that Murloc on turn 2 has really paid off here for ProDG, as the Gentle Megasaur has to just be played here. And this is just going to unlock the coin Jade Lightning onto this
Yep.
Gentle Megasaur, being able to push additional 4 damage to face here. And this is where the Shaman can start running away with things like this. Because I mean, his board just starts getting a little bit wider and wider from this point onwards, and things like Flame Tongue Totems as well as Bloodlust become a bit of an issue. And because Paladins don't run the Consecration, it's very difficult for them to swing the board back in their favor.
Yeah, things are looking really good for ProDG right now. That's exactly the kind of minion he wanted to find with that Jade Lightning. And now, with this Flame Tongue Totem, he's able to pull even further ahead because now he can use Flame Tongue Totem and trade just the 1/1 and use his weapon to clear off this Cobalt Scalebane. So that's also going to allow him to push 9 damage here. So things are looking really good, and that Taunt Totem roll is just another thing going in his favor here, as he's pushing really far ahead on the board. With
Yeah.
the Flame Tongue Totem, it's going to be so difficult for Superlubo to get back. And as you mentioned, no Consecration, which is something that would have basically been a bare minimum for Superlubo to find here.
Yeah, so there's 10 damage on board. I mean, you might just see this thing from below come down, because that can be so useful here. And we can also see the Jade Claws. I mean, I don't even think you're really worried too much about the Silverhand Recruit. The only thing you really got to worry about is obviously Bone Mare. But I really wouldn't worry about that either if you actually had the Devolve at hand.
Hmm. Yeah, I think ProDG here, he can just go with the Jade Claws and the thing from below. It looks pretty good. It's gonna probably set up for lethal next turn. I don't mind trading the Crab here, but by trading the smaller minions, he's playing around the slim possibility of there being something like the Consecration that we mentioned. I really would like him to play this thing from below though as well. He can just play the Galaka instead of the Jade Claws here. The Jade Claws does give him a bigger minion though, and it allows him to push 2 damage now. So Jade Claws does seem pretty neat here. And now
Yeah.
Super Lubo, that's pretty much nothing he can do here, as he's going to go ahead and concede, and ProDG is going to be our champion for this ESL Southeast Europe Championship qualifier number 3. So he's going to be taking home 100 points, which is going to
Yeah.
go a long way towards helping him qualify for the regular season, as it is the players that have the top 4 or the top 4 point earners across the 4 qualifiers that do qualify. And right now, Superlubo and ProDG were both tied for third there, so that's a really good win for ProDG, managing to find the win there. And that's going to take him up to 178 points, which is going to be a difficult point to catch, or a difficult amount of points to catch. And certainly for the players outside of the current top 4, it's going to be very difficult for them to overtake him. So as long as he maybe plays and just gets a few points tomorrow, he should be guaranteed making it.
Yeah, I suspect that if he gets to around about like the top 16 again or top 32, he'll probably be good off again. But I think playing tomorrow either way would be important for him at the end of the day. As that does conclude our broadcast here on the English stream for the ESL Southeast European Championships, with ProDG winning this third qualifier and securing himself an additional 100 points.
In
I don't know
fact,
if you have any
looking
closing.
looking at the overall rankings, there's only, I think, 1 or 2 players outside the current top 4 that could catch him. So he's almost guaranteed. He would need to maybe not play. If he didn't play tomorrow, he would need all 4 of the other players to probably make the top 4, with the 2 of the lowest players currently make the like one of them needs to win. I actually think he's almost guaranteed qualification at this point. Because obviously it's impossible for 2 other players to score 100 points, and being ahead already of Blanky and Meku, who are the 2 closest to him outside the top 4 in 5th and 6th, I think it's going to be very difficult. It's still possible for those 2 players to make it, but I don't think they're going to be overtaking ProDG now after he's had some really good results.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our broadcast here. The 4th qualifier is tomorrow. The broadcast will start round about when the last 16 kick off. It seems to happen around about 2:30, 3:30 our time. So 1:30, 2:30 Central European time.
Yeah.
If my math is correct, and if my time zone's correct.
If you want to find out when we're going to be going live, you can just follow us on Twitter, or you can follow at ESLC. You can find us on Twitter. You can find myself at dib_gaming, and you can find Penguin over there. Oh man, I'm pointing the wrong direction. Over there at the Penguin ZA on Twitter. We will always post before going live, and then you can come and tune in if you want to keep up with the action tomorrow and find out who exactly are going to be those top 4 point earners to make it through. So thanks a lot for tuning in today. And once again, a really good showing, I must say, from the Bulgarian players. They're really running this tournament at the moment, with this final being an all Bulgarian final. So I'm sure the players are happy with that, I'm sure they're happy at least that their compatriots are doing well as well.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are living in the Southeast European region, we are running a giveaway as part of ESL. If you type in !giveaway in the chat, enter everything there, follow the instructions, and you could find yourself winning an ESL 2.0 Pro chair. Very nice chair. If you're wanting to compete in the competition as well tomorrow, if you type in !qualifiers, you'll be able to find the link for tomorrow's fixture, where you'll be able to enter for this tournament. Maybe even give ProDG a bit of a run for his money. Make it hard for him to qualify at the end of the day.
Yeah, if you haven't been playing so far, it's going to be very difficult to make the top 4. But, maybe you just enjoyed watching it and you want to take part in the tournament. It's always really good to get tournament experience as a player. And quite frankly, a lot of players can find tournaments a lot more exciting than ladder. I know that's definitely true for myself. So if you've been finding ladder a bit boring and you're in one of the eligible countries, then come along and play. And maybe we'll be casting your game tomorrow.
Yeah, so that does end our broadcast here. I've been Penguin today, joined once again by a man who is not just a pretty face, but actually knows something about Hearthstone. Dib. Thank you so much for joining us here. We'll see you tomorrow at around 3 o'clock South African Standard Time, or 2 o'clock Central European Time.
Yeah. Cheerio.
Bye.